The glass stood still, yet offered no reflection. Welcome to Faded Echoes. I am your host, Ombra. Share where you're listening from in the comments. I love seeing this community connect across the map. Your words always brighten these mysteries. Let's begin. The afternoon started the way Nero Wolfe likes his life. Regular, repetitive, and with no trace of novelty to endanger his routine. Fritz was in the kitchen turning a chicken into an argument against vegetarianism. From the smells sneaking out under the pantry door, the chicken was losing beautifully. Up on the roof, the orchids were enjoying their after-lunch audience of one. Wolfe, who had gone up at 9 and had come down at 11, right on schedule, more dependable than most clocks and a lot heavier. At 3 o'clock he was planted behind his desk in the office, lips on a book and eyes on another one, which is one of his tricks I don't try to imitate. I was at my own desk, trying to disentangle a pile of correspondence, some of it written in English and some in what I would generously call client. The phone hadn't rung for 30 minutes, which meant either Manhattan had achieved perfect peace and justice, or business was slow. I was leaning toward business being slow when the doorbell rang. From the way it rang, short, sharp, and twice, it wasn't a delivery boy. Delivery boys put their thumb on the button and let God sort it out. This one had rhythm. I looked at Wolfe. His eyes didn't move from the page. "Somebody wants something," I announced. "Shall I tell them we're out of stock?" "No." His thumb turned a page. "Tell them what you please, but not that. There is always stock." "Fine. I'll try not to sell any." I went out to the hall and opened the front door. The man on the stoop had the kind of face that comes in handy when you're telling people what they did wrong. It was lean and carved, with lines at the mouth that said they'd spent years practicing disapproval. He wore a gray topcoat over a darker gray suit, the tie understated, the shoes newly shined. The whole package said money, but not the kind that sprays champagne at midnight. This money read contracts, slept 8 hours, and itemized deductions. "Mr. Goodwin?" he asked. The voice matched the face. Controlled with a trace of impatience held on a short leash. "That's right," I said. "And you're the 3 o'clock surprise." His eyes flicked past me to the interior. "I have an appointment with Mr. Nero Wolfe." I had not heard about any such thing. If Wolfe had started making his own appointments, it was a new phase in our relationship, and I was against it. "Who told you that?" I asked. He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out an envelope. My name was typed on it. That, at least, was encouraging. I took it, opened it, and read, "Archie. A Mr. Oliver Brand will call at 3. Admit him. N.W." The note was on Wolfe's own paper and in my own, boss's own handwriting. If someone was forging it, they'd earned the fee. "Congratulations," I told the visitor. "You're right. Come in, Mr. Brand." He stepped inside. When I closed the door behind him, I noticed his right hand was gloved and his left wasn't. The left hand clutched a hat, gray, matching the rest of him. The right hand stayed in his coat pocket, as if it was guarding something or didn't want to be seen, or both. He noticed me noticing and raised his eyebrows. "The glove is due to a minor burn," he said. "Nothing dramatic." "Too bad," I said. "Mr. Wolfe loves drama. He just doesn't like participating in it." "Right this way." I led him to the office and held the door for him. Wolfe didn't look up until I said, "Oliver Brand, Mr. Nero Wolfe. He has an appointment that you neglected to mention to your devoted staff." Wolfe's gaze lifted, making the trip from the page to Brand as if it required effort and calories he would rather have saved. Wolfe isn't getting slender with age, and he isn't trying. The chair behind his desk was built with him in mind, and no one else's rear end in the 5 boroughs would dare try it on. "Mr. Brand," he said. "Sit down." Brand sat in the red leather chair facing the desk. That chair has entertained murderers, liars, heiresses, bankers, saints with secrets, and the occasional district attorney. Brand settled into it like he'd just been shown an itemized invoice. "Thank you," he said. "I appreciate you seeing me on short notice." "The gratitude is premature," Wolfe told him. "You have not yet been seen." "Archie, beer." I went for the beer, wondering when exactly I had turned into a prop. Fritz had already put several chilled bottles in the kitchen fridge, so I liberated one with the reverence due an endangered species and brought it back with the glass on a tray. Wolfe watched me pour, then took the glass and had a decent sip. "Now," he said, "you may explain why you have disturbed my afternoon." Brand's eyes flicked from the beer to Wolfe's face. "I was told you preferred brevity and facts." "You were misinformed. I prefer precision and relevance." Wolfe set the glass down. "If facts accompany them, so much the better. Who told you that I would see you?" Brand hesitated. "A mutual acquaintance. He said your name, your reputation, and your fee would be appropriate to the problem." Wolfe's mouth tugged into something that, in a looser man, might have been a smile. "My reputation is a fact. My fee is an inevitability. Your acquaintance's name?" Brand's right hand moved a fraction in his pocket. His jaw clenched. "He asked me not to involve him any further, Mr. Wolfe, but I assure you he is reliable." Wolfe shifted in his chair, which for him is like another man doing calisthenics. "You come recommended by a man whose name you will not divulge." That is untidy. Archie, note the time." I checked my watch. 3:12. "Very well. Mr. Brand, you have exactly 10 minutes to become relevant. After that I shall ring, Fritz will come, and he will escort you out, politely but conclusively." Wolfe closed his eyes, which did not mean he stopped seeing. "Begin." Brand took a breath. "I represent a theatrical concern. Specifically, I am the business manager and part owner of a stage company currently performing at the Regal Theatre on West 44th. "Theatre," Wolfe said, as if testing a bite of something Fritz had prepared with too much garlic. "Go on." "Our star attraction is an illusionist. His professional name is Anton Vale. You may have heard of him." I hadn't, but Wolfe might have. "He spends more time with books than with living people, but he has a long memory for headlines, scandals, and things people get worked up about without reason." "I have not," Wolfe said. "I avoid spectacle." Brand nodded sharply, as if he had expected that. "Mr. Vale's signature illusion involves a large pane of glass on stage. A mirror. The trick is advertised as the glass that never reflects. He stands in front of it, in full view of the audience, and yet his reflection never appears. Assistants cross in front of it, props are carried past, all are reflected. But not him." Wolfe opened his eyes. "I will give Brand this." That got him a step closer to relevance. "A stage illusion," Wolfe said. "You are aware that I'm not a magician's consultant. If you wish to protect your glass from thieves or spies, you should consult the police or purchase a safe." "It's not that." Brand's voice tightened. "The illusion has been sabotaged, deliberately, and if it continues, it won't just ruin the show, it will ruin Anton. Possibly all of us." "Sabotaged," Wolfe repeated. "How?" Brand's gloved hand finally left his pocket and pulled out a folded object, a photograph. He extended it toward me. I took it and gave it a glance before carrying it to Wolfe. The photograph showed a stage, curtains, footlights, a long rectangular pane of glass framed like a doorway. In front of it stood a man in a tuxedo with hair that worked hard for dramatic effect. He was mid-gesture, arms extended, one hand up, one down. Behind him, in the glass, I could see the stage, the curtains, some blurred faces in the audience, and him. His reflection was right where it should be. "Is that Anton Vale?" Wolfe asked. Yes. You advertised that the glass would not reflect him. Exactly. And as you can see, that night it did. Wolfe studied the photo, then set it on the desk as if it were a mediocre appetizer. Perhaps your illusions have grown too subtle for your audience and are returning to reality. Brand's jaw clenched again. Mr. Wolfe, for 3 years that illusion has worked flawlessly. Anton walks in front of the glass, stands, moves, no reflection. We've played 2 sold-out houses. Then, 2 weeks ago, during a Friday night performance, the glass reflected him as if it were an ordinary mirror. No warning, no change in staging or equipment. Nothing. It happened again last Saturday and once more this past Wednesday. If your patrons received what an ordinary mirror provides, then the disappointment is conceptual, not material, Wolfe said. They can hardly demand a refund because physics has reasserted itself. Brand leaned forward. It isn't just a trick, Mr. Wolfe. The illusion is Anton's identity, the man who doesn't exist in the glass. That's what the press calls him. Our advertising, our posters, our reputation, it all centers on that effect. When the audience sees his reflection, they feel cheated. They think he's a fraud or worse, that the whole routine is some shabby gimmick. We've already had nasty comments in the papers. If it continues, we'll be finished. Then consult an engineer, or we have, Brand snapped. Then he checked himself and smoothed his tone. We've brought in technicians, electricians, stage experts. They've gone over the glass, the lighting, the angles. No defects, no tampering they can find. The effect still works in rehearsals. It only fails during performance, and not every time. If it fails only sometimes, Wolfe said, the effect is defective. That's what they want people to think. Brand's eyes met Wolfe's. But it's not a malfunction, Mr. Wolfe. It's a message. Oh? Wolfe's voice cooled a degree. From whom? From someone who wants to destroy Anton Vale, Brand said. Someone who knows the illusion, how it's done, how it can go wrong. Someone with access. Every time the glass reflects him, it's a dagger in his reputation. We are being bled, one performance at a time. And yesterday, Anton received a note. Brand reached into his inner pocket again and pulled out a smaller envelope, creased and handled more than he liked. He slid a folded sheet from it and passed it to me. I took it to Wolfe. The note was typed. No letterhead, no signature. Just 3 lines. When the glass shows you, the world sees what you really are. I will make sure it never stays empty. You don't deserve a mirror that lies. There was no date on it. The envelope had a Midtown postmark. Wolfe read it twice, then laid it beside the photograph. He leaned back, expanded his chest enough to test the seams of his vest, and closed his eyes again. Archie, he said, get the notebook. I got my notebook. When he uses that tone, it's not to jot down a recipe. Mr. Brand, Wolfe went on, this sabotage, if that's what it is, has occurred only during performances. Yes. And always when the house is full. Yes. Friday and Saturday nights, and the Wednesday was nearly full as well. Has anyone died? Brand blinked. No. Been assaulted, injured, or deprived of liberty? No, but has any money been stolen? He hesitated. Not directly. But the box office. Wolfe opened his eyes. I asked if money had been stolen. Brand swallowed it. No. Then what you bring me, sir, is not a crime in the strict sense. It is vandalism of reputation and disruption of commerce. You want your illusion protected and the author of your anxiety identified. You wish to preserve your income and your star's vanity. Brand's lips thinned. You put it very bluntly. I put it accurately. Why then did you not consult the police? We considered it, Brand said. He shifted in his chair. Anton refused. He says involving the police would make him look weak. Besides, what would they do? Put a detective in the front row and wait for the glass to misbehave? He gestured with the gloved hand. We would rather solve this quietly, discreetly. Of course, Wolfe murmured. He picked up the photograph again, peered at it, and then let it fall back. You said we. You and Mr. Vale. And our partners, Brand said. The company is structured with 4 primary stakeholders: Anton, myself, our producer, and the theater's majority shareholder. We are all affected if this continues. Names, Wolfe said. Brand drew in a breath. Anton Vale, the illusionist. Myself, Oliver Brand. The producer is a woman, Lorna Dane. The majority shareholder of the Regal is Frederick Hallowell. 4 primary stakeholders, Wolfe repeated. And others? We have a supporting cast, Brand said. Assistants, stagehands, lighting technicians, but only the 4 of us see the full financial picture or the contracts. Contracts, Wolfe said. Ah. His eyes moved to me. Archie, note the names. I did. Wolfe picked up his beer and had another cool, thoughtful swallow. This note? Was it shown to anyone besides Mr. Vale? Only to me and Miss Dane, Brand said. We agreed to keep it between us. Hallowell doesn't know. Why not? Brand's eyes hardened. Because Mr. Hallowell would use it as leverage. He has already threatened to cut our run short if receipts fall. If he believed Anton was unstable or being targeted, he might pull the plug immediately, sell the weekends to some touring musical, and leave us with nothing. Wolfe grunted. That's the Wolfe equivalent of a nod. So, he said, you come to me. Why me? You said your nameless acquaintance recommended me. Why did he imagine I would consent to meddle in theatrical illusions? Brand hesitated, then said, Because this isn't just about a stage trick, Mr. Wolfe. It's about identity. You will have to elaborate, Wolfe said, if you wish me to tolerate that word in my office. Brand's mouth twisted. Anton didn't invent that illusion, at least not alone. Years ago, before I came on the scene, he was partners with another magician, a man named Gideon Lark. They worked together, developed routines. The mirror illusion was theirs. Then Lark was caught plagiarizing another performer's act. There was a scandal. Anton severed the partnership publicly, claimed sole authorship of their material, and reinvented himself as the man with no reflection. Lark vanished. Career ruined. Anton went on to success. And you suspect, Wolfe murmured, that Mr. Lark is not as vanished as advertised. Someone has an intimate understanding of that illusion, Brand said, of its mechanisms and psychology. Someone with a grudge. The way the note is phrased, about not deserving a lying mirror. That sounds like someone who thinks Anton stole more than applause. And your acquaintance who recommended me? Wolfe pressed. Brand's eyes dropped. He knew Gideon Lark. He said if Lark was behind this, if he had found a way to strike back, it would require not just a security guard, but someone who understands people. Motive. Psychology. He said you rearrange people's lives without leaving your chair. Wolfe breathed out, a long, slow gust. He set the beer down, unused hand flattening on the desk blotter. You flatter me by half, he said. At twice my fee, that might be acceptable. Brand's eyes snapped up. Then you'll take the case. I have not said so, Wolfe replied. I'm considering whether the matter is sufficiently interesting to compensate for its inevitable annoyances. Theater, egos, contracts, and nobody. You want a corpse? Brand demanded, startled. No, Wolfe snapped. I merely observe the absence of the usual inducement. I'm being invited to expose a saboteur of spectacles, a vandal of glass. That is all. Brand swallowed. It may not remain all, Mr. Wolfe. Anton is volatile. If this continues, he may do something drastic, to himself or someone else. His sense of self is tied up in that glass. He's built his life around not seeing his reflection, Now someone is forcing it on him. That, I will admit, hit a note. I saw Wolfe's shoulders shift a fraction. The big man does not go in for sentiment, but he has his own brand of ethics, and they're heavier than he is. "You believe," Wolfe said slowly, "that your Mr. Vale is in danger because someone is tampering with his illusion?" "Yes," Brand said, "and I believe whoever is doing it won't stop until they've destroyed him. Completely." Wolfe shut his eyes again, as if he was listening to a private orchestra. When he spoke, his voice was almost reflective. "A man," he said, "who cannot bear his own reflection, who builds a career on avoiding it, and another who thinks he does not deserve that mercy." He opened his eyes. "Mr. Brand, my fee is—" He gave the figure, which you don't need and wouldn't like. "Payable with a retainer of 1/3 in cash or certified check. If that is agreeable, and you will place in my hands all documentation relevant to your contracts, your company's finances, and the backgrounds of the persons you named, I will consider this matter accepted." Brand's shoulders dropped just a little. Relief, like steam, started to leak. "I have a cashier's check with me," he said, "and I can have the documents delivered tonight." "Not tonight," Wolfe said firmly. "Nothing is delivered to this house after 6 o'clock except food, and only from Fritz. Tomorrow morning, Archie will give you the hour." I would. That was news to me, but I've had worse. Brand reached for his checkbook wallet. Wolfe held up a hand. "One more thing. I will not be dragged into theatrics on stage. I do not attend performances. If my presence is required, the engagement is cancelled." Brand blinked. "But the illusion is on stage. How will you—" "Mr. Brand," Wolfe's voice flattened, "I sit in this chair. People and facts come to me. That is the arrangement. If you require a detective who hops about in the dark and peers at wires, I suggest you consult the telephone directory." Brand hesitated, then nodded. "If that's your condition, we accept." I didn't, but nobody had consulted me. "Archie," Wolfe said, "take Mr. Brand's check, give him a receipt, and arrange an appointment for tomorrow at 10. He will bring the documents and whatever other debris he thinks relevant. We will also need, in due course, the names and contact information for everyone who has access to that glass, including but not limited to your 4 stakeholders, your technical staff, and your doorman." Brand opened his mouth. "You think the doorman?" "I think nothing," Wolfe said. "Yet, you wish me to think about this. Then bring me material to think about. That will be all for today." Brand looked like he wanted to argue. Then he caught himself, closed his mouth, and rose. He slid the check across the desk. Wolfe nodded to it without touching. I escorted Brand out, gave him the appointment, and saw him to the door. When I came back, Wolfe was looking at the photograph again. The man in front of the glass stared back, multiplied by paper and imagination, frozen in mid-gesture. His reflection in the picture seemed normal enough. The only oddity was the absence of any explanation beside it. "Okay," I said, dropping into my chair. "We've officially entered show business. Should I start practicing card tricks?" "No," Wolfe said. "You should suspend your inane commentary and listen. Tomorrow you will go to the Regal Theatre. I thought you told Brand you don't attend performances." "I do not," he said. "You will. You will walk upon their boards, peek behind their curtains, and listen to their lies. You will observe this glass, this illusion, and the people orbiting it. You will discover who resents whom, who fears what, and which of them looks at a mirror as an enemy. And then, he said, closing his eyes, we shall see whether a pane of glass that refuses to tell the truth can be persuaded to reveal it." He reached for his beer, took a long, thoughtful sip, and set the glass down without a sound. The case, apparently, had begun. Over a reflection that sometimes appeared when it shouldn't, and a man who had built his life around never seeing himself. I had a feeling the first thing that was going to get reflected, like it or not, was us. I didn't get much time to savor the quiet after Brand's exit. Wolfe had settled into the kind of contemplative silence that means he's building a mental scaffolding, and the last thing you want to do is go rattling around in it. I filed the receipt, tucked the check in the safe, and came back to find him staring at the photograph like it had personally offended his sense of order, which, considering the situation, it probably had. Wolfe hates when the world behaves inconsistently. A mirror that sometimes chooses to reflect the wrong man is practically a declaration of war. I waited until his eyes stopped drilling holes in the glass in the picture. "So," I said, "tomorrow I go mingle with people who make their living sawing each other in half. Should I bring a first aid kit?" His gaze shifted to me with all the enthusiasm of a man inspecting a parking ticket. "You will observe. You will listen. Above all, you will avoid engaging in any theatrics." "Me?" I said. "I wouldn't know a theatrics if it had footlights." He closed his eyes again. "This case is a nuisance. The subject matter is frivolous, the personalities will be asinine, and the environment." He exhaled regretfully. "A theater is a breeding ground of vanity. People who preen for applause are generally little use to anyone but themselves." "Which makes them perfect suspects," I offered. "Which makes them noisy," he corrected. "Noise complicates thought. But Brand is correct about one thing. Someone is deliberately unsettling this illusionist's mind and doing so with precision." I leaned back. "You thinking it's this Gideon Lark fellow?" "Thinking, no. Suspecting. Tentatively." Wolfe opened his eyes and shifted a fraction in his chair, his version of leaning forward. "If Lark exists as a possibility, he exists as a threat. A man whose professional life has been destroyed does not always accept defeat with grace, particularly in the realm of performance, where a man's sense of self may be disproportionate." I made a note of that phrasing. Coming from Wolfe, disproportionate was the polite version of one good shove from collapse. "So tomorrow," I said, "I get names, faces, tempers, grudges, and any other souvenirs lying around backstage at the Regal?" "Yes." He closed the photograph folder and pushed it aside. "And you will take care to avoid alerting them that they are being studied. People in the theater are accustomed to watchers. They perform under observation. What unsettles them is being understood. You think that'll make them talk?" "No," Wolfe said, "but it will make them react, and reactions can be read." He lifted an eyebrow. "If you apply yourself." I let that slide, mostly because Fritz chose that moment to announce dinner. Wolfe decided the case could wait while he shifted his energy toward the trout amandine, and I decided the case could wait while I appreciated Fritz's ability to turn almonds into a moral argument in favor of staying alive. The rest of the evening ran like it usually does when Wolfe has a new client. Orchid time, beer, a book, and the silent contemplation of humanity's flaws. I left him to it and went to bed thinking about mirrors, magicians, and the kind of person who sends a typed note telling a man he doesn't deserve a lie. When morning came, I was up before Wolfe, which isn't unusual since sunrise refuses to adjust itself to his preferences. I had coffee and the paper down by 8. The front page had nothing about illusionists or sabotage. The back page had a review praising some new play that probably wouldn't last through the weekend. The middle had 2 articles arguing with each other about city taxes. It was the usual Manhattan breakfast. Wolfe didn't appear until just before 9, freshly shaved and radiating the attitude of someone who expects the world to behave because he's awake now. He gave me a curt nod, which, translated from Wolfe, meant he was ready for the day. At 9:57, Oliver Brand arrived with a slim briefcase, the kind you buy when you want people to think you keep important papers inside even if you don't. This time, both his hands were gloved. Maybe he decided asymmetry was bad for business. I led him to the office. Wolfe was at his desk, the mountain in its natural habitat. Brand placed the briefcase down, opened it, and started lining up folders like he was arranging evidence at a congressional hearing. "These," he said, "are copies of the financial agreements between the four of us. Contractual obligations, profit shares, performance clauses. This stack is the technical documentation for the illusion, the assembly notes, equipment inventories, and the specifications for the glass. And these," he set down a thinner packet, "are the personnel lists, everyone with keys to the stage areas or access to Anton." Wolfe didn't reach for anything. He let Brand construct his little paper skyline, then said, "Archie will take them." I gathered the folders while Wolfe watched Brand with the kind of gaze that made men confess things they didn't do. "You will go to the theater directly from here?" Wolfe asked. "Right after escorting Brand out," I said. "Good. When you arrive, begin with the stage manager. A stage manager is a sensible creature. Their job requires it." Brand nodded. "Her name is Scylla Hart. She's competent, blunt, not fond of Anton." Wolfe grunted. "You will also speak with Miss Dane and Mr. Hallowell if they're present. And with Mr. Vale." Brand pressed his lips together at the name. "He won't like being interviewed." "Few do," Wolfe said. "It is irrelevant." I closed the folders and tucked them under my arm. Brand buttoned his coat, offered the kind of handshake Wolfe never accepts, and ended up directing it at me instead. I saw him out. When I returned, Wolfe was already cracking open the first folder. Papers fluttered like oversized butterflies as he began sorting them with the grim focus of a man adjusting the universe to his standards. "Archie," he said without looking up, "observe everything. Do not interfere with their rehearsals unless you must, and do not make the mistake of assuming that performers are more foolish than they appear. That sounds like you suspect they're less foolish." "It sounds," he said, "like I want this solved before I'm forced to attend a performance." I headed for the door with the folders secured. The Regal Theatre was waiting, along with a magician who didn't like mirrors, a partner who wore gloves, and a pane of glass that had opinions. I couldn't help wondering which of them would be the first to crack. The sky over 44th Street had the color and texture of paper that had been erased too many times. It wasn't raining, but it was thinking about it, which is typical Manhattan hospitality. I crossed to the Regal Theatre, a once grand structure with a marquee that had seen livelier fonts. The posters outside featured Anton Vale in his tuxedo, arms raised, hair dramatic enough to require its own billing. "The glass that never reflects," the text announced in letters large enough to trip over. Below it, someone had slapped a sticker from a gossip column. "Is the illusion losing its magic?" Brand hadn't exaggerated about the press being unkind. Inside, the lobby smelled like theater dust. Velvet, old programs, hope that had been folded too often. A woman with a headset and a clipboard, standard stage manager camouflage, looked up from a stack of schedules. "You're not an actor," she said, flatly but not rudely. "And you're definitely not a critic, so you must be the detective." "Archie Goodwin," I said. "Nero Wolfe's office." She held out a hand. It was small, square-fingered, and had the grip of someone who dragged scenery more than once. "Scylla Hart, stage manager." She jerked her chin toward the auditorium. "Rehearsals between cues right now. You want to start here or in the back?" "Back," I said. "Wolfe likes to begin where the noise starts." She nodded and led me down a side hallway. The Regal was a maze of corners, ropes, and reminders never to touch the curtains unless you wanted someone to scream. Scylla moved through it with the purpose of a woman who could find her way, blindfolded. We reached the wings. On stage, a couple of assistants were moving props around while a lighting tech adjusted something high enough that you'd need prayer or a harness to reach. In the center, covered by a cloth, stood the famous glass. Scylla followed my gaze. "You'll want to see it. Anton's not here yet. He's usually late to rehearsal unless he's making an entrance." "Does he rehearse late too?" She snorted. He rehearses selectively. The illusion itself is set up by the crew. Anton mostly handles the performance, the timing, the gestures. His brand is mystique. And how's his mystique holding up? Like a drunk on roller skates. She lifted the cloth from the glass. The thing looked ordinary enough, a tall, rectangular pane framed in polished steel and mounted on casters. A mirror with a reputation for lying. I walked around it. The reflection behaved like any reflection. Obedient, complete, honest to a fault. It works fine now? It always works fine now, she said, and during every rehearsal, but throw an audience in front of it and something changes. Veil steps into place and bam, his reflection's right there, smirking back. And no one spotted tampering? You think I'd still work here if I missed tampering? She shot back. I've been running stages for 20 years. If someone sneezes on a pulley rope wrong, I know it, but nothing's been touched. Yet the illusion fails. Yes, she folded her arms. And don't bother asking how the trick works. I don't know. Anton guards the method like it's the last slice of cake. Only 3 people have ever known the full mechanism. Brand mentioned them. Anton, Brand, and Gideon Lark. Her face tightened a fraction. So he told you. Lark was the one with the real technical mind. Anton was the showman. Together they made things work. Then Lark flamed out and Anton rose from the ashes. And now, here we are. You think Lark's involved? I think, she said carefully, that a man who disappears after humiliation has time to plan a comeback. But I've never met him, so I can't swear he's the type. Before I could press that, a voice from across the stage called, Scylla, the rig on the downstage right is whining again. She sighed. I've got to fix that before someone breaks their tailbone. If you want to snoop, feel free. Try not to touch anything breakable. She hurried off. I looked the glass over again, trying to imagine how an illusion that failed only under an audience's attention could be sabotaged. Most tricks are mechanical, but sabotage that behaves selectively is psychological. Someone who knew exactly what would get under Veil's skin. I crouched near the base and inspected the frame. No scratches, no fingerprints, no signs of tampering. Nothing to tell you the thing had ever misbehaved. Behind me, a voice said, It won't tell you, not through looking. I turned. A tall man in a dark shirt stepped out from the shadows. He had the kind of posture that belonged on stage even when he wasn't on it, and eyes that had practiced intensity. This had to be Anton Veil. I'm guessing you're the magician, I said. He inclined his head. Illusionist, magicians do tricks. Illusionists change perception. There's a difference. Noted. Archie Goodwin. Yes, he said. Brand told me Wolfe was sending someone. His eyes flicked to the mirror with something between hatred and grief. You'd better make this quick. I'm not in the mood to be examined like a diseased animal. Then try not to bite, I suggested. Be easier for both of us. He paced near the glass, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight. Did Brand tell you everything? The note? The failures? The gossip columns calling me a fraud? He left out how you feel about mirrors, I said. Anton stopped. I don't feel about mirrors. I mastered something no other performer has mastered. I turned absence into identity, and someone is trying to drag me backward into mediocrity. You sound afraid. He wheeled on me. I'm angry. That's different. Sometimes, I said, only in the spelling. He started to say something else, but a woman's voice cut across the stage. Anton, darling, if you're finished brooding, we need to discuss Wednesday's performance. A woman swept in from stage left with the confidence of someone who'd been in charge since birth. Tall, stylish, and wrapped in enough charisma to power half the lighting rig. Lorna Dane, the producer. She spotted me. And you are? Archie Goodwin, investigator. Wonderful. She didn't sound like she meant it. Brand's idea, no doubt. He always reacts to trouble by hiring someone. He should try solving things himself sometime. I'm just here to ask questions, I said, starting with who might want to rattle Vale's cage. Her eyes flicked to Anton, then back to me. Darling, that cage is rattled daily by existence. But if you want a list of people with grudges, you'll need a stack of paper. Anton bristled. Lorna, it's not slander if it's true, she interrupted cheerfully. Before that argument got cozy, another voice called from off stage, this one sharper and carrying an authority that didn't need volume. Scylla said someone was poking around. If that's you, step forward. A man in his 50s strode in, silver hair, severe expression, and the air of someone who considered owning a theatre only slightly less important than owning the people in it. Frederick Hallowell. Great, I muttered, the full cast. He looked me over like I was a spilled drink. And you are? Archie Goodwin. Why are you here? To see whether your glass has a personality disorder. He didn't smile. We don't need outsiders. Meddling. The theatre runs fine without detective games. Except your star keeps showing up in the mirror. That shut him up for half a second. Then he said, fix it, quietly, quickly, or this company folds. He stalked off. Lorna sighed dramatically. Anton glared at the glass like it had insulted his mother. Scylla yelled something backstage that sounded like a threat involving rope tension. And I stood there, taking the whole circus in. Wolfe had wanted reactions, personalities, egos, motives. He was going to get a full buffet. But first, I needed to decide which of these people was most likely to sabotage a man using nothing but timing, psychology, and deep familiarity, and which of them still remembered a magician named Gideon Lark. I stayed where I was for a moment, letting the echoes of Hallowell's exit fade into the flies. The Regal wasn't a quiet place, even on a slow morning. Somewhere up above, a metal bar clanked, and backstage someone laughed with the kind of sharp exhaustion that usually means the coffee machine is broken. But the four people who mattered, Anton, Lorna, Scylla, and Hallowell, had delivered what Wolfe wanted, their first reactions. All I had to do now was pry them into something more conversational. Anton was still hovering near the glass, jaw tight, shoulders locked. I decided to start with the one least likely to throw something heavy at my head. Scylla reappeared from the wings, wiping her palms on her jeans. The rig was loose, she said. Again. One more squeak and I was going to hang myself from it in protest. You get anything useful? 4 personalities, I said. 3 sharp edges, 1 straight razor. She snorted. That's the Regal for you. You ever see the illusion malfunction yourself? Not just the aftermath. She leaned against a crate, thinking. Twice. Both times I thought I'd had a stroke for a split second. You get used to an illusion performing one way for years. When it changes, the brain doesn't like it. And Anton? Anton doesn't like change, period. He's not good with unexpected. Unexpected reflections, I asked. Her eyes slid to the glass. He hates mirrors. He says it's bad luck for a performer to watch himself. I've known performers who avoided mirrors, but not like him. Anton treats reflections like they're judgmental. Any idea how the trick works? None, she said. The only person who could have explained it was Lark, and he's vanished, I finished. Brand and the others made him sound like a ghost with a grudge. She shrugged. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. In theatre, people disappear all the time. Some come back with better hair. Some don't come back at all. Before I could press further, Lorna Dane glided toward us, holding a cigarette she wasn't smoking. She waved it gently in the air like it was a conducting baton for guiding conversations. Scylla, sweetheart, are we ready for Q14? She asked. Define ready, Scylla replied. I'll take that as a no. Lorna turned to me. Mr. Goodwin, since you're in the neighborhood, would you care to walk with me? I talk better when I'm moving. It fools me into thinking I'm headed somewhere productive. I followed her along the back corridor, passing racks of costumes, boxes of props, and a chalkboard filled with rehearsal notes. Lorna stopped at a small dressing alcove, the kind that smelled faintly of powder and ambition. Brand told me about the note, she said, leaning against the doorway. He worries. That's his profession. Mine is to turn worry into revenue. Anton's is to turn revenue into panic. You think he's panicking? I think he's terrified. She tapped the cigarette against her palm. Anton reinvented himself after ditching Lark. New persona, new illusions, new reputation. Everything he built hangs on that mirror not showing him. If it keeps failing, she let the rest hang in the air like stage dust. Did Lark really plagiarize someone's act? She shrugged. He lifted pieces from a touring illusionist, yes. Whether it was intentional or sloppy, only he knew. But Anton used it hard, told the press he'd been betrayed, took all the acts they created together and rebranded them as his own. Lark took the fall. Did Lark deserve it? Her lips twisted. Deserve is a flexible concept in show business, but he disappeared with more grace than Anton showed forgiving him. And you think he'd come back? I think people don't vanish just because the lights go down. They wait for the right cue. She smoothed her sleeve. But if Lark is involved, he's smarter than this. Sabotaging a mirror. Too crude, too emotional. You're assuming he still cares, I said. Oh, darling, she said gently, everyone cares, especially the ones who pretend they don't. I left her pondering that and made my way back toward where Anton was circling the glass like a cat sizing up a rival feline. He turned when he heard me coming. Finished interrogating my producer? He asked. For now, I wanted to talk to you. Then talk. You and Lark, I began. How did that partnership end from your side? With betrayal, he snapped. He stole from me. He tried to steal the future I was building. And you used that to elevate your own name. He stepped closer. You don't know anything about what happened. Lark wanted shortcuts, wanted to be famous without the discipline. I was the one who had vision. I had ideas beyond cheap imitations. You also had a gift for making headlines, I said. The scandal helped you. His jaw tightened. It helped me survive. There's a difference. And now the mirror is turning against you. He flinched. It was tiny, half a blink, half a breath. But I caught it. No, mirror, he said quietly. Should tell me who I am. I didn't get a chance to ask what he meant. A shout echoed from the far end of the stage. Anton, your dressing room. Someone's been inside. Scylla was hurrying toward us, face tight, headset bouncing against her shoulder. Anton stiffened. Inside how? Drawers open, your trunk unlatched, and the mirror piece you keep in there. He lunged past her, heading for the corridor. I followed because you don't ignore a lead that runs at sprinting speed. Scylla trailed behind us, firing off directions to the crew through her headset. Anton's dressing room door was half open, light spilling into the hall. Inside, the place was a mess. Chair tipped over, makeup scattered, costume pieces knocked off their racks. Drawers were pulled wide and a small velvet-lined box lay open on the vanity. He rushed to it. It's gone. What is? I asked. He turned to me slowly, the stage lights catching something raw in his expression. The original fragment, he said, the first piece of the mirror Lark and I built together. Sentimental value? I asked. No, he said. Technical value. Whoever took it knows exactly how our illusion works. That made the air feel colder. Tampering with a full-size glass was one thing. Stealing the key to understanding its mechanism was another. Someone wasn't just sabotaging the act anymore. Someone was dismantling its foundation, and dismantling Anton along with it. The room held its breath for a full 3 seconds before anyone moved. Anton stood rigid, staring into the open velvet box like it contained the corpse of a dream. Scylla hovered by the doorway, hands tense, head set slightly askew as if she'd forgotten it was attached to her. I took in the scene the way Wolfe trained me to. Not just the mess, but the pattern of the mess. Drawers were pulled out unevenly. A few items tossed, others untouched. It wasn't vandalism, it was a search. Quick, directed, and done by someone who knew exactly what mattered and what didn't. "You mind telling me what this fragment looks like?" I asked. Anton dragged himself out of the trance and shot me a glare that would have wilted wallpaper. A sliver of the original mirror, opaque on one side, treated with the same compound we used on the larger glass. Unique, irreplaceable. Small enough to pocket? Yes. His voice was brittle. Whoever did this knew where it was. Only a handful of people even knew I kept it here. "Veil," Scylla cut in, stepping closer. "Think carefully. Who comes in and out of this room besides you?" "No one," he snapped, "unless someone forces their way in." I pointed at the lock. "There's no sign of that." His eyes darted to the door handle, then to me. "Locks can be picked." "Not by ghosts," I said, "which means we're looking at someone with access. Someone backstage." His face twisted. "Are you suggesting one of my own people is sabotaging me?" "I'm suggesting nobody sneaked in from a rooftop vent wearing a cloak," I said. "And whoever stole that fragment wasn't browsing for jewelry. They came for that and only that." Scylla stepped toward the vanity, scanning quickly but methodically. "Nothing else is missing. His wallet's still here. Watch, cufflinks, everything." She straightened. "It wasn't a thief." "No," I said. "It's someone delivering a message." Anton's voice cracked like ice. "I know who it is." That pulled both our eyes to him. He swallowed. "Lark. Gideon Lark. Who else would do this? Who else knows the illusion like he does?" "You're assuming he's alive," I pointed out. "He's alive," Anton said fiercely. "He's alive and he hates me, and now he's making sure I feel it." Scylla shot me a look over his shoulder, one that said, quietly but unmistakably, "He's losing his grip." Anton's breathing had gone shallow, his hands twitching in small, restless arcs. "Anton," she said softly, "you can't just—" He rounded on her. "Yes, I can. Lark built half of what I am. He knows the framework. He knows the weak points. He knows how to undo it." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "He knows the places I'm afraid to look." Scylla didn't try to stop him when he stalked out. She just expelled a breath and rubbed her forehead with the heel of her palm. "Well," she muttered, "that went about as well as a drunken trapeze act." "Has he ever mentioned Lark before?" I asked. "Not in years," she said. "But the name's a wound, not a memory. You saw his face." "Hard to miss," I said, then nodded toward the dressing room. "Mind if I take a better look?" "Be my guest. I'll get a couple crew members to stand guard. He'll want to come back here eventually, and I don't trust people not to poke around." She disappeared down the hall. I knelt beside the tipped chair and crossed to the drawers. No signs of force, no marks on the wood. The rummaging was selective. Swift. Whoever did it knew exactly where the fragment was kept. Second drawer on the right. Easy to reach, easy to lift. They hadn't bothered opening the top drawer at all, which told me this wasn't exploration. This was execution. I stepped back out into the corridor just as Lorna Dane approached, cigarette once again unlit, but traveling with her like a familiar prop. "I heard shouting," she said. "Should I assume the crisis is escalating or simply maturing?" "Depends," I said. "Does theft escalate or mature?" She narrowed her eyes. "What was taken?" "A piece of the original mirror." Her expression didn't break, but something shifted behind it, like a stage curtain catching a draft. "That," she said quietly, "complicates things." "Mind explaining why?" "Because that fragment is the only physical proof of how the illusion was originally constructed. Without it, the only person who knows the technical foundations is Anton, and she gestured vaguely toward where he disappeared. Anton is not in a state where he can be trusted to remain composed. Who else knew where he kept it? She smirked. Do you really want that list now, or do you want it alphabetized? Give me the short version. Anyone who's paid attention, Lorna said. Anton's habits are predictable. He's dramatic, but not subtle. Brand didn't mention that. Brand doesn't notice subtleties unless they involve gross profits. She leaned a shoulder against the wall, studying me. If you're smart, you'll tell your wolf that things are going to get worse before they get better. Someone stealing that fragment isn't trying to expose a trick. They're trying to break a man. She pushed off the wall and glided down the corridor before I could press her more. I watched her go, then checked the hallway in both directions. No sign of anyone suspicious, but the air felt charged. The kind of charge you get in a room before someone throws a punch. Scylla reappeared. 2 stagehands are outside the door. No one gets in without me knowing. Good. I tapped my notebook. I need a list of everyone who has a key to this corridor. Keys won't help you, she said. Half the people backstage have keys. The other half know ways around using them. Even better, I said. Give them all to me anyway. She nodded and hurried off again. I left the corridor, heading back toward the stage, where the glass still stood under the lights like an uncooperative witness. I stared at it, trying to imagine the stolen fragment, the missing puzzle piece someone now had in their pocket. Someone was dismantling the illusion from both ends. The big one on stage, and the small one in Anton's drawer. And if Wolfe had taught me anything, it was that thieves rarely steal pieces. They steal leverage. The question Wolfe would ask next was already forming in my mind. Whoever took that fragment, what do they want, and who's going to break first? The mirror or Anton Vale? I stayed with the glass for a few minutes, long enough to convince it wasn't going to whisper any secrets or confess to misconduct. Mirrors, in my experience, rarely volunteer information. People, on the other hand, can sometimes be persuaded to leak it. If someone had stolen the fragment, they had either done it for Anton's benefit, which seemed unlikely unless benefit was being defined by a sadist, or for his destruction, and judging by Anton's emotional trajectory, they were succeeding. The stage darkened a bit as the lighting tech up above shifted a beam. I stepped back, letting the platform be swallowed into shadow. If someone wanted Anton unstable, rattled, and publicly unraveling, they'd accomplished step 1. Now I had to figure out step 2. Scylla returned, with a sheet of paper and the put-upon expression of someone who had been forced to assemble it while wrangling a dozen egos. Here, she said. Everyone with access to this corridor and the dressing rooms. The list was surprisingly long. Stagehands, lighting technicians, 2 carpenters, a costumer, 3 assistants, Scylla herself, Lorna, Brand, and Anton. Hallowell was conspicuously absent. No key for the owner? I asked. He has one, she said. He just doesn't use it. Hallowell doesn't come backstage unless something is on fire or he wants to yell at someone. Comforting to know he limits himself. She smirked. You want interviews? Or do you want me to pretend not to notice you snooping? Let's start with pretending, I said. It's friendlier. She went back to the stage, barking orders in a manner that suggested friendliness wasn't her strongest department. I headed toward the wings where I'd seen a cluster of stagehands earlier. Better to start with the people who actually touched things around here. A stocky guy with tattoos of gears running up his forearms was coiling cable neatly enough to impress a mathematician. He looked up as I approached. You're Wolfe's guy, he said. Name's Denny. Archie Goodwin, I said. You work with the glass? He shrugged. I work with everything. But yeah, I've moved it, cleaned it, fixed the wheels on the base. Heavy sucker, but not complicated. Notice anything odd with it lately? Besides the whole reflecting the wrong man issue? He rubbed his jaw. Nope. Frame's solid. Latches tight. Surface is scratch-free. You seen anyone hanging around Anton's dressing room? He gave me a look. You think I've got time to watch the halls? I'm lucky if I get 10 minutes to eat lunch. But you hear things, I said. He grinned. Sure. Gossip travels faster than sound in a place like this. He leaned in slightly. Word is Anton's been on edge for weeks, jumpier than usual, snapping at people. Lorna's been smoothing things over, but he's spooked. What about Lark? I asked. Denny's eyebrows shot up. You digging into ghosts now? Just names. Well, that's one you don't want to say too loud. Gives people ideas. He hooked another cable. Lark was a legend on the technical side. Could build an illusion out of string and spite. When he and Anton split, half the crew thought the world was ending. The other half thought Anton finally figured out how to get rid of dead weight. And where do you fall? I wasn't here then. But the old-timers talk. Some think Lark was railroaded. Some think he deserved worse. And if someone wanted revenge? He shrugged again. Then they'd know exactly where to stab. I thanked him and moved on to 2 assistants organizing props near a rack of costumes. They had the frantic energy of people who hadn't slept since Tuesday and didn't expect to again until Thanksgiving. The taller one, a woman named Leah, answered my questions while multitasking like a circus juggler. Anton's dressing room, anyone could have slipped in. Half the time I'm running cues and the other half I'm fetching his tea. People walk past that hall constantly. Did you? Not today, she said, then paused. Actually, Hallowell did. That got my eyebrows involved. Hallowell was backstage. She nodded. Right before everything blew up. He stormed through looking for Anton, said something about a contract revision and a missed meeting. He went down the dressing room corridor, but I didn't see him come back. Did he have a key? If he doesn't, she said, keys are scared of him. I thanked her and made a mental note to give Wolfe that nugget. Hallowell's opinions didn't include humility. If he'd decided to confront Anton backstage, that could explain his sudden vanishing down the hallway. Next, I caught the lighting tech as he climbed down from the rafters. He shook his head before I even asked anything. I didn't touch the dressing rooms, he said. Haven't been near them today. Anyone who did. I saw Brand come in earlier, he said. He went straight to Lorna's office. Looked steamed about something. So nothing about the glass? Look, man, the glass freaks me out. One day it ignores the guy. The next day it suddenly behaves like a regular mirror. If you ask me, that's not sabotage. That's karma. He scurried off with the speed of a man who preferred heights to conversations. By the time I circled back to the stage, the rehearsal had stalled. Anton hadn't returned. Scylla was trying to keep everyone from mutinying. Lorna was pacing in heels sharp enough to use as weapons. Hallowell was nowhere to be seen. I checked the time. Wolfe would be expecting a report, and he didn't like being left hungry for information any more than he liked being left hungry for dinner. I found a quiet corner by the curtain and dialed the brownstone. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Yes? Your glass case just cracked wider, I said. Anton's dressing room was searched. A fragment from the original mirror is missing. A long pause. Describe the disturbance. Targeted. No sign of force. Someone knew what they wanted. And Mr. Vale? Agitated, I said. That's the polite word. A man who fears mirrors, Wolfe murmured. Fears the truth reflected in them, and someone is exploiting that fear. Report more. I gave him the rundown. Hallowell lurking in the corridor, Lorna's evasiveness, Scylla's concern, the crew gossip about Lark. I could practically hear Wolfe collating the information in real time, fitting it into whatever mental scaffolding he'd been erecting since yesterday. When I finished, he said, "Return at once." That urgent? Yes, Wolfe said. Because whoever is orchestrating this is accelerating. They have taken a piece of the illusion's heart, and I must decide whether this is merely psychological warfare or prelude to something more perilous. Perilous how? Archie, he said in that maddeningly calm tone. A man who obsesses over not being reflected is already unbalanced. Strip away the illusion that sustains him, and he may become incautious. You think Anton might hurt someone? That, he said, is what I intend to determine. Come home. He hung up. I slipped the notebook back in my pocket and looked one last time at the stage. The empty glass gleamed under the dim work lights, cold and perfect. Somewhere in this building, someone carried a missing fragment of it, small, sharp, and capable of cutting more than glass. And Anton Vale was unraveling thread by thread. Time to bring Wolfe the needle. I didn't waste time once Wolfe gave the order. I slipped out through the side exit, leaving behind the hum of rehearsal and the low-level panic that seemed to cling to the place like leftover fog. The street outside was brighter now, the clouds deciding they'd tormented Manhattan enough for the morning. I walked fast, partly because Wolfe wanted answers, and partly because something in the dressing room scene had left an itch in the back of my head. One of those itches that doesn't go away until Wolfe either confirms it or insults me for thinking too slowly. By the time I reached the brownstone, Fritz was at the door with an expression that said he'd timed lunch around my arrival and expected me to behave accordingly. I passed him with a "later, I promise," and headed for the office. Wolfe was in his chair, the usual monument of flesh, thought, and mild irritation with humanity. The folders Brand had brought lay open on the desk, arranged with geometric precision. A fresh bottle of beer sat beside them, untouched. He looked up. Well, I gave him the rundown from the moment I'd walked into the Regal to the moment I'd walked out. Scylla's assistance, Lorna's tension, Hallowell's stalk through the hall, the crew gossip, the search of the dressing room, the missing fragment. Wolfe listened without interruption, eyes half-lidded but sharp enough to cut string. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. Describe the fragment again. Anton said it was part of the original prototype, treated, opaque on one side, small enough to pocket, and crucial to understanding the deception. You think the saboteur took it to reverse engineer the illusion? No, to exert pressure. He tapped a forefinger lightly on the blotter. Knowledge is leverage, and leverage is a lever. Someone wishes to move Mr. Vale. Toward what? That, Wolfe said. We are about to infer. He leaned back. The search in the dressing room. How long between your arrival at the theater and the discovery? An hour, maybe a little under. And how soon after Hallowell traversed the corridor? 15 minutes, give or take. Wolfe shut his eyes. That's always step one when he's about to sort human beings like they're spices. Mr. Hallowell is arrogant, brusque, and impatient. But sabotage of this complexity does not align with arrogance alone. He would prefer a solution involving lawyers and contracts, not subterfuge. I agree, I said. He doesn't strike me as the slip into a dressing room type. On the contrary, Wolfe said, I think he would slip into any room he pleased. I merely suspect he would not rummage in drawers. He would require someone else to do it. Someone he trusts. Someone who can access the technical heart of the illusion. That narrows it to Brand, Anton, and Lark. And Miss Dane, Wolfe added. She has been with the production long enough to acquire knowledge by osmosis and curiosity. She didn't seem eager to talk about the technical side. No, Wolfe said. She seemed eager to direct suspicion, primarily at Lark. You think she's lying? I think she is performing. Theater people often are, which makes them unreliable witnesses to their own thoughts. He opened his eyes. Archie, bring me the personnel list. I handed it over. He scanned it briefly. You have spoken with Scylla Hart, yes? Enough to know she's competent, honest, and badly underpaid. And the stagehands? Most of them. Nobody feels like a criminal mastermind. But someone saw Hallowell go down that hall. Yes, Wolfe murmured, which may be precisely why he did it. You think he wanted to be noticed? I think he wanted to be the obvious suspect, Wolfe said, which is rarely the true one. He shifted again, a movement small but weighty. Tell me, did Mr. Vale appear frightened or merely agitated? Both, I said. But the fright was hiding under the anger. When the fragment went missing, it rattled him. Of course. A man whose identity is tied to an illusion is vulnerable to any threat against it, and someone is exploiting that vulnerability. This is not random sabotage. It is psychological excavation. Meaning, he said. Our antagonist is not attacking the mirror. They are attacking the man who fears it. I took a breath. Wolfe, if someone wanted him off balance, pushing him toward a breakdown, yes. And if his grip is already slipping, yes. Then what's the end game? Ruin, revenge, or something worse? Wolfe's eyes narrowed at the last word. You mentioned a note. Read it again. I did. He listened with an expression that suggested each word was being weighed on a scale built for subtler units than ounces. When the glass shows you, the world sees what you really are. I will make sure it never stays empty. You don't deserve a mirror that lies. Wolfe said quietly, that is not the voice of a saboteur. That is the voice of an intimate enemy. Lark? Perhaps. But the tone is too personal, too invested. If Lark wished to ruin Anton professionally, he could do so through exposure of technique. If he wished to ruin him emotionally, he would choose a method that mirrored Anton's crime against him. Crime? Wolfe flicked a hand. Professional betrayal, if Miss Dane is to be believed. But people rarely write such notes over business quarrels alone. This is someone who knows Mr. Vale deeply, someone with resentment steeped long enough to curdle. So someone in the inner circle. Not necessarily, Wolfe said. Someone close to the inner circle. That distinction is crucial. I realized then what had been itching in my mind. Wolfe. Scylla said only 3 people knew the full mechanism of the illusion: Anton, Brand, and Lark. Yes. But Lorna knew about the fragment, and the crew gossip confirmed she'd been smoothing over Anton's instability for weeks. She's involved more deeply than she's saying. Wolfe made a small, approving noise. You are progressing. And someone stole the fragment today, I continued. Someone who knew where it was but didn't take anything else. That means the thief either watched Anton enough to know his habits, or, Wolfe said, was told where to find it. Told by who? That, he said, depends on who benefits most from Mr. Vale's unraveling. I leaned forward. You think someone's pushing Anton toward something drastic? Possibly, and we must determine what and why before the next blow is struck. Wolfe stretched 2 fingers toward the bell cord but paused. Archie, before we summon Mr. Brand tomorrow morning, you must return to the Regal. Not tonight. Now. Why the hurry? Because, Wolfe said softly, a man who fears his reflection is dangerous when he begins to fear the people behind him as well. I want you to find Mr. Vale. And if I do? You will watch him, Wolfe said. Closely. Someone is tightening a noose of the mind around him. When it snaps, I want my eyes there. And if someone else reaches him first? Wolfe's voice dropped to a low growl. Then the saboteur's next act may not involve a mirror. I stood. All right, I'll head back. Wolfe closed his eyes again. Be quick, and be precise. I left the brownstone at a near run, retracing my steps toward the Regal. Somewhere inside that theater, Anton Vale was unraveling, and someone was waiting for him to break. I made it back to the Regal in less time than it usually takes to shake a cabbie awake at a red light. The building looked different now, though nothing about the bricks or marquee had changed. Urgency has a way of tinting the edges. I pushed through the lobby doors and didn't need to get far before I sensed trouble waiting, like a stage queue. The place was quieter. Not silent, nothing in show business is silent, but the chaos had thinned. No rehearsal chatter, no prop clatter. The air carried that taut, vibrating stillness you get when everyone is in separate corners, holding their breath for the next disaster. A man in black jeans and a headset spotted me coming. "Goodwin," he said, jerking his chin toward the stage. "You'd better get back there. Things happened." I didn't waste time asking what. I moved. The backstage corridor was a different landscape than I'd left. The lighting was dimmer, the echoes sharper. I passed a stagehand who looked like he'd tried to stop a runaway train with his bare hands. He didn't make eye contact. Scylla met me halfway down the hall, and the expression on her face confirmed Wolfe's hunch. The noose had tightened. "You picked a hell of a moment to come back," she said. "What happened?" She lowered her voice. "Anton's missing." That stopped me cold. "Missing how?" "He walked out during the break right after you left. Said he needed air. 10 minutes later, someone found the side door propped open. Nobody's seen him since." "Checked the dressing rooms?" "All, even the unused ones." "Nothing." "How long has he been gone?" 30 minutes, maybe 35. That was long enough for trouble to find him or for him to go sniffing for it. Who else knows he's missing? "Just the inner group. Me, Lorna, Brand, and a handful of crew." Then she added, "And Hallowell." "How'd he take it?" "He said," and this is a quote, "if he runs, let him. The show will make more money with a hologram." Charming man. I'd sent him a sympathy card when someone finally stuffed him into his own orchestra pit. "Where are the others now?" I asked. Brand's in Lorna's office, arguing. Lorna is pretending to meditate, but mostly drinking tea. Hallowell's stomping around looking for someone to blame. "And you?" "I'm holding the theater together with tape, caffeine, and the threat of unemployment." She pointed toward the side hallway. "Start there. It's the door he went through." I headed in that direction. The side exit was propped with a sandbag, the door itself vibrating slightly from the breeze outside. Someone had wedged it open cleanly. No splinters or forced hinges. I knelt, checking the floor. No fresh scuffs or drag marks. Anton didn't leave kicking and screaming. He walked. That didn't comfort me. Outside, the alley was long, narrow and poorly lit. The kind of place where rats and cigarette smoke like to gather for conferences. Nothing moved. A fire escape loomed overhead. A dumpster leaned like it had given up on life. Then something caught the corner of my eye. A faint glint under the dumpster, something glassy and small. I crouched, reached, and pulled out a shard. Thin, reflective, cut at an angle. It could have been anything, but the hairs on my neck offered a different interpretation. A shard of mirror. Too small to be part of the stage glass, but large enough to belong to something personal. Something like the fragment Anton kept in his drawer. Unless someone smashed it, which didn't fit the thief's earlier behavior. I wrapped the shard in my handkerchief and pocketed it before tunnel vision could kick in. Footsteps behind me. I spun. Brand stood just inside the door, face pale, sweating under an expression that blended guilt, worry, and something sharper. "You found something?" he asked, voice tight. "Maybe," I said. "Did you come looking for me or for Anton?" "For Anton," he said, though it didn't land convincingly. "He's unstable. You saw how he reacted earlier. If he's out here alone, he might..." "Might what?" Brand swallowed. "Make a mistake." His eyes darted to the alley walls, scanning them like someone expecting a ghost to leap out. He wasn't faking his terror. Brand was scared, but of what or whom wasn't clear yet. "How long have you been out here?" I asked. 5 minutes, he said. "Scylla told me you were coming and that I should follow. She thought you might need help." It sounded plausible. It didn't sound reassuring. "Let's go back in," I told him. "Anton didn't leave any footprints or breadcrumbs, so unless he climbed the fire escape like an angry cat, he's gone farther." Brand nodded. We walked up the hall in silence, reaching the backstage area again. That's when I heard voices, raised ones. Lorna Dane had decided meditation wasn't working. "You don't understand, Frederick," she was yelling. "He's not running. He's unraveling. And if something happens to him, this theater goes with him." "If something happens to him," Hallowell shot back, "this theater is finally free to book talent that doesn't cry about his own reflection." Brand stepped in automatically, hands raised like a referee. "Both of you, enough." They ignored him. Lorna turned to me when I entered. "Did you find him?" "No," I said, "but I found something else." I didn't show the shard yet. Not until I understood what role it played. Hallowell snorted. "Wonderful. Another useless clue. Can your Mr. Wolfe conjure an illusionist out of thin air, too? Or are we just wasting money?" "You'd be amazed what Wolfe can conjure," I said. "Mostly opinions." Hallowell jabbed a finger at Brand. "This is your mess. I told you we should have replaced Vale months ago. The man is a liability." "Is he?" I asked. "Because it seems to me someone wants him broken, not replaced." That shut them up. Briefly, it was Lorna who spoke next in a slow, deliberate tone. "Mr. Goodwin, if someone is pushing Anton to the brink, if someone wants him to snap, then they won't stop at rattling his mind." "And you think they'll escalate?" I said. She nodded once. Brand wiped his forehead. "We have to find him." Hallowell made a noise like he disagreed. Loudly. Scylla approached us then, out of breath, face drawn. "There's more," she said. "Someone found a note." That got everyone's attention. "Where?" I asked. "In Anton's dressing room," she said, "propped up on the mirror." We moved fast, 6 bodies funneling through the corridor toward the dressing room, though I made sure to arrive near the front. Scylla pushed open the door. The room was quiet again, but not empty. On the vanity mirror, taped dead center, was a new note, typed like the first. 3 lines. "If you can't face the glass, you can't escape it. Tonight, the audience will see everything." Lorna inhaled sharply. Brand turned ashen. Hallowell cursed under his breath. But it was Scylla, voice trembling, who said what we were all thinking. "Oh God, he's not disappearing. He's being hunted." The silence that followed Scylla's remark wasn't the ordinary kind. Theater silence, full of rustling curtains and impatient foot-tapping. This one landed heavy, thick enough to muffle breath. 6 of us stood in Anton's dressing room, facing the taped note on the mirror like it was a verdict waiting for signatures. Brand was the first to move. His hand shot out to rip the note free, but I caught his wrist before he could do anything dramatic or stupid. "Leave it," I said. "Wolfe will want to see it exactly as it is." Brand pulled back, jaw clenched. "We have to find him now." "Find him, yes," I said, "but not by panicking. Panic just makes you chase shadows at a discount." Scylla crossed her arms tightly, staring at the mirror as though expecting it to answer for the crime. "These notes, they feel different than the sabotage. More pointed, more personal." "They're personal," I said. "Very. Too personal for a simple revenge prank." Lorna paced once, twice, then snapped her cigarette in half before remembering she hadn't lit it. "This is Gideon. It has to be. This kind of rhetoric. Anton would understand the implication, especially the line about the audience." "You're trying very hard to make Lark the villain," I said. She froze. "I'm trying to explain the context." "That's funny," I said, "because context usually helps, and so far you've only offered dread." Her eyes sharpened. "If you knew what Anton did to him—" Brand cut her off sharply. "Not now. Hallowell, who had been hovering near the door like a man hoping the floor might swallow him before anyone looked his direction, decided to contribute. "You're all missing the point. This entire situation is proving what I've said for months. Vale is unstable. The show cannot depend on him." I turned to him. "And if he's unstable, someone is making sure he stays that way." Hallowell's nostrils flared. "Don't you dare imply I'm implying nothing," I said. "But I am noticing things. Things like the fact that you were the last one seen heading toward this hole before the dressing room got ransacked." His face blotched red. "I did no such thing." "Yes," Leah's voice said from the doorway. "You did." Hallowell spun around. Leah stood there with a clipboard and the posture of someone who knew the truth would be far more satisfying than her paycheck. "I saw you," she said. "You were storming down the hall muttering about contracts. You weren't exactly subtle." Hallowell sputtered something resembling an insult, caught himself halfway through it, then clamped his mouth shut. He straightened his suit with a violent tug. "I didn't touch anything in his room. Why would I bother? I don't waste my time on props." "Props," Scylla echoed, incredulous. "That prop is half of Anton's identity." "Yes," Hallowell snapped, "and that's precisely the problem." Brand stepped between them. "Enough. We need to focus on Anton." We did, because Hallowell was unpleasant, but unpleasantness wasn't the same thing as dexterity or subtlety. The notes had a signature tone, a deliberate psychological cadence. Hallowell barely had the patience to read a memo. The idea of him composing poetic threats was like imagining a freight train performing ballet. I moved to the vanity and studied the new note without touching it. 3 lines, centered precisely. The same typeface as the first. Whoever typed these liked symmetry and pressure. If you can't face the glass, you can't escape it. Tonight, the audience will see everything. I read the lines again, and the room dimmed a little around the edges as the shape of the threat came into focus. This wasn't about breaking the illusion. It was about forcing Anton into a confrontation with something or someone on stage tonight. I said quietly, "He's planning something for tonight's show." Brand stepped closer. "You think the saboteur will strike again?" "No," I said. "I think Anton might." That landed like a hammer. Lorna stopped pacing. Scylla stopped breathing. Even Hallowell hushed his indignation long enough to frown. Scylla found her voice first. "No, Anton wouldn't hurt anyone." "No," I said. "But hurting himself, that's another story." Lorna's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, God." Brand backed up until he hit the wardrobe, then braced a hand against it like gravity had turned hostile. "He wouldn't," he whispered. "He couldn't." "He's frightened," I said. "He's unraveling, and someone who knows him is tugging at every loose thread." I pulled the wrapped shard of mirror from my pocket. It was still in the handkerchief, still giving off that faint glint that didn't belong in an alley. "What's that?" Scylla asked. "Found it outside the side door," I said. "Under the dumpster." Brand's eyes widened. "Is it part of the fragment?" "Possibly." I kept my voice measured. "Possibly not, but it's broken, which means either Anton smashed it or someone smashed it in front of him." Hallowell scoffed. "He probably dropped it. He's dramatic enough." "Dramatic enough to write notes to himself, sabotage his own show and frame a ghost?" I said. "No. Anton's ego doesn't work that way." Brand suddenly straightened. "We need to check the stage. If he's going to do something reckless, he'll do it where everyone can see." I shook my head. If that were the plan, why leave a note warning about tonight? "No, this isn't a declaration. It's a countdown." Lorna looked ill. "Countdown to what?" "Whatever the saboteur wants to force Anton to face." I checked my watch. Nearly 2 hours had passed since Anton slipped out. He could be anywhere, wandering the neighborhood, hunting down ghosts, or spiraling privately. But if the saboteur wanted tonight's show to be the climax, he wouldn't hurt Anton now. He needed Anton alive, afraid, pushed to the edge but not over it. Yet. We split up, I said. Search the nearby streets, alleys, cafes, anywhere he might go to hide or stew. Brand nodded immediately. Scylla followed. Lorna hesitated, then agreed. Hallowell made a noise like agreement grated against his spinal cord, but said nothing. Before we dispersed, Scylla grabbed my arm. Goodwin, be honest. If we find him, what do we do? We keep him safe, I said, until Wolfe has enough pieces to build the trap. And the saboteur? She asked. I gave her a small, grim smile. Wolfe doesn't trap illusions, Scylla. He traps people. And as we all spilled out of the dressing room and scattered into the theater and the city beyond, one thought dug itself in deep. Someone wasn't just hunting Anton Vale, they were staging his final act. We did not, as a group, cover ourselves with glory in the search department. Brand, Scylla, Lorna, and I scattered in different directions like we were planning a production called Four Blind Mice. Scylla took 9th Avenue. Lorna went east toward the hotels. Brand prowled the cross streets, and I drew the short straw of circling the blocks closest to the Regal on the theory that a man fraying at the edges doesn't immediately hop a train to Connecticut. I checked 3 coffee shops, 2 bars, 1 park bench, and a pawn shop window where a tuxedo on a headless mannequin gave me a moment's pause. No Anton. No dark-haired, high-strung illusionist muttering about glass and ghosts into a cup of coffee. After an hour of that, I found a payphone that didn't look homicidal and called Wolfe. He's not in the neighborhood, I said, unless you count hiding in the orchestra pit. I doubted he would be, Wolfe replied. His tormentor doesn't want him lost. He wants him frightened. He will not be allowed to stray far. Come home. You don't want me to keep looking? No, I want you here. I've been busy. His tone shifted. Saul located him. That got my attention. Where? An unremarkable bar on 10th Avenue where a man can drink and feel sorry for himself without attracting notice. Saul is with him now and will keep him in hand until 8 o'clock. 8? Yes, Wolfe said. At 8, Mr. Brand, Miss Dane, Mr. Hallowell, Miss Hart, and Mr. Vale will all be here. I have asked them courteously to attend. You will see they comply. How'd you talk Hallowell into that? I offered him what he wants. A solution that protects his investments, and of course, the opportunity to hear himself talk in a new room. Wolfe paused. Archie, bring the note and the shard. I patted my pocket. Already on board. Then, he said, get back here. We're approaching the end of this tiresome spectacle, and I prefer to be finished before Fritz serves the roast. By 8 o'clock, the office looked like a combination of casting call and arraignment. Wolfe was in his chair behind his desk, big and immovable. I was at my own, notebook ready. Fritz had brought in extra chairs. We needed them. Lorna and Brand sat side by side, close but not friendly. Scylla chose a chair a little apart, as if ready to jump up and adjust a light cue. Hallowell didn't sit. He planted himself near the globe stand and leaned on his impatience. Anton Vale came in last with Saul Panzer just behind him, which is like saying a man came in with an invisible steel cable looped gently but firmly around his neck. Anton looked worse than when I'd left him, paler, tighter around the eyes, but not drunk. Either he'd stopped in time or Saul had taken action. Either way, his hands shook slightly as he lowered himself into the last chair. Wolfe surveyed them as if someone had delivered a box of assorted pests. Thank you for coming, he said. I dislike clutter, but on occasion it is necessary. We will not be interrupted. I will speak and you will listen until I invite you to do otherwise. Is that clear? No one answered out loud, but no one left either. Wolfe turned his head to me. Archie, the note. I took the second note from my pocket, still folded the way I'd found it on Anton's mirror, and handed it over. Wolfe scanned it, then laid it next to the first, which was already on his blotter. 2 notes, he said. Both typed, both anonymous, both addressed implicitly to Mr. Vale. His gaze landed on Anton. They aimed to wound not his body, but his perception of himself. Anton's mouth tightened, but he said nothing. The author, Wolfe continued, knows that your identity is fused to your illusion of absence, the glass that does not reflect you. He resents that. He believes you do not deserve that protection. He wants to strip it away publicly. He wants the audience to see everything. Then it is Locke, Brand said abruptly. It has to be. Who else would... Mr. Brand. Wolfe didn't raise his voice, but Brand stopped anyway. You have been diligent in nominating Gideon Locke. We will come to that. First, the facts. He picked up the photograph Brand had brought on that first afternoon and held it up between thumb and forefinger. For 3 years, he said, this illusion functioned flawlessly. The glass never reflected Mr. Vale. Then, recently, at certain performances only, it betrayed him. In rehearsal, it behaved. Under examination, it behaved. Only when the seats were full and the stakes high did it turn traitor. That is not mechanical failure. That is choreography. Scylla shifted in her chair. But the text checked everything. We checked everything. Everything physical, Wolfe said. The glass, the frame, the lighting, the wiring. But not the simplest element of all, the mark on the floor. Anton's head jerked up. The mark? Yes, the point at which you stand when you face the glass. In order for the illusion to work, Wolfe's eyes flicked to Scylla, you must occupy a very precise position, a matter of inches. If you are correctly placed, the glass does not reflect you. If you are induced, even subtly, to shift, he let his shoulders move the smallest fraction. Physics reasserts itself. You appear. Silence. Then Scylla swore softly. The spike tape. Yes, Wolfe said. The tape on the boards. Did you personally lay it down before each performance? Most nights one of the crew does, she admitted. Sometimes I redo it if a set moves over it. And when the illusion failed? She swallowed. I wasn't watching the tape. I was watching him. Wolfe nodded once. As was your saboteur. The simplest, least detectable form of tampering was merely to move the mark. Not grotesquely, not feet, but a hand's breadth. Enough. That's ridiculous, Hallowell barked. Any fool could think of that. Any fool could, Wolfe agreed. But fools don't write these. He tapped the notes. Nor do they orchestrate a slow, escalating campaign of pressure, including the theft of a cherished artifact and the manipulation of a man's deepest fear. He glanced at me. Archie. The shard. I took out the handkerchief, unwrapped it, and placed the broken piece of mirror on the blotter between the 2 notes. Under my fingers, it gave a quick, cold flicker, my face jigsawed into facets. This, Wolfe said, was in the alley by the Regal's stage door. Mr. Goodwin retrieved it shortly after Mr. Vale disappeared. I submit that it is part of the fragment stolen from his dressing room. Brand shook his head. You can't know that. No, Wolfe said. I can't. I infer it. The timing, the location, and the nature of the theft make it very nearly certain. Our tormentor did not take that fragment to study it technically. He took it to destroy it. Specifically, to destroy it where Mr. Vale could see or be told that it had been destroyed. A symbolic murder of your shared past, Mr. Vale. A final insult to the mirror that lied for you. Anton's breathing had gone shallow. He stared at the shard, then at the notes. Locke, he whispered. It is Locke. Is it? Wolfe asked mildly. Gideon Locke vanished years ago in the public sense. A ruined career, a scandal. No one in your company has seen him since. Oddly, though, he has lingered in the wings of your story like a spectre. Convenient, malleable, safely absent. A perfect scapegoat. Lorna's hands twisted together. What are you implying? That Gideon Lark did not sabotage this illusion, Wolfe said, because Gideon Lark has been too busy these past years being someone else. He turned his gaze fully on Brand. Oliver Brand, he said, is an excellent name for a businessman. Solid, curt, unobtrusive. Before you came to the Regal, Mr. Brand, your paper trail is remarkably thin, almost as if you sprang into existence mid-career. Brand swallowed. I have records. Yes, Wolfe said, for the past decade. Before that, there is a void. Saul Panza is thorough. He found one man whose face, altered by time and weight, matches yours more closely than you might like. Gideon Lark, in an old playbill photo. The nose, the jaw, the set of the eyes. And of course, he glanced at the gloved hands. The burn. Anton made a small, hoarse sound. Lorna stared at Brand like she'd never seen him before. Scylla's eyes went wide. Hallowell's mouth twisted, but he kept quiet for once. Brand's composure didn't shatter, but it cracked. His shoulders stiffened, his lips drew back a millimeter. You're insane, he said evenly. I came to this business as an investor. I met Anton through a mutual acquaintance. You have no such acquaintance, Wolfe said wearily. You invented him to explain your interest. You knew Mr. Vale long before he knew Mr. Brand. You knew him as a partner who betrayed you and walked away with your work and your future. Reinventing yourself as a financier allowed you back into his orbit, close enough to manage his career and to begin dismantling it. Lorna whispered, Oliver. Brand turned on her. Don't look at me like what? Wolfe asked. Like the man who engineered a plagiarism scandal so sloppily that it was easily pinned on him. You are not alone in your sins, Mr. Vale. His eyes moved back to Anton. Were you? Anton's eyes were closed. When he spoke, his voice was raw. He took the ideas too far. He was the one splicing routines from other acts. I warned him. You joined him, Wolfe said. Until the scandal broke. Then you saw your chance. You painted yourself as the innocent visionary, fooled by your unscrupulous partner. You seized full credit for the acts you built together. The press loves a wronged genius. They adored you. Anton's hands clenched on his knees. He ruined us. You let him take the fall, Wolfe said, and watched him vanish while you climbed. Years later, when you needed someone to manage your finances and navigate your contracts, a convenient Oliver Brand appeared. Remorse, perhaps, or a way to keep your enemy where you could watch him. Anton looked at Brand. You never... Brand's control broke then. He rose halfway from his chair, then sat again hard, as if the movement hurt. What was I supposed to do? He demanded, the polish stripped from his voice. You left me with nothing. No name, no reputation, no booking. You signed your name under both of ours, and the world forgave you. I offered you a position, Anton said weakly. As your subordinate, Brand spat, as your shadow, making sure the money flowed, the contracts stayed favorable, the illusions were financed, all while you took the bow for what we made. You didn't offer me restitution, you offered me servitude. You accepted, Wolfe noted. Oh, yes, Brand said. I accepted. I smiled. I became indispensable. I kept the show afloat. I invested my own funds. I was the safe pair of hands everyone trusted. He laughed, a short, unpleasant sound. And then, when you built your persona on that damned mirror, the one we designed, the one that let you hide from your own face. His gaze swung back to Anton, hot and bright. I realized I could do more than keep you afloat, he said. I could decide when you sank. Lorna was pale to the lips. You started the sabotage. Of course I did, Brand said. I moved the tape, half an inch at first, then an inch. I watched him step into the wrong place and see himself. I watched him flinch. The audience gasped. The reviews turned. Slowly, deliciously. Every time the glass betrayed him, it clawed at the foundation he'd built on my work. "And the notes?" I asked. He flicked a glance at them. Truths he'd never hear from you cowards. Wolfe grunted. "You overplayed your hand with the fragment. The escalations grew too bold. You could not resist stealing that piece of the original mirror, could you? You lured him to the alley, showed him its destruction, and left him to stew. Then you placed the second note on his dressing room mirror, knowing he would either collapse or perform tonight in a state ripe for something irrevocable." Brand's jaw clenched. "You hired me," Wolfe said, "because you wanted your revenge understood. You wanted perhaps the satisfaction of watching me chase your phantom, Gideon Lark, through your little theater while you played the concerned partner. But you miscalculated on 2 points. Brand's lip curled. "Enlighten me." "First," Wolfe said, "you underestimated the speed and thoroughness of Saul Panzer. Second, you misunderstood Mr. Vale. For all his vanity and cowardice, he did not quite reach the point where he would destroy himself for you." Anton stared at him. "You wanted me to kill myself on stage." Brand didn't answer in words, but the silence was enough. Lorna whispered, "Oliver, Gideon, whatever your name is. My God." Hallowell spoke up then, voice harsh. "You endangered this theater. You tampered with our show, our staff, our reputation." Brand snorted. "You'll survive. You'll book another act. You always do." "Yes," Wolfe said, "but you won't be there to count the receipts." Brand turned back to him. "You think you can prove this in court? A moved tape mark, a broken mirror, some old playbill and a private investigator's hunch?" "Perhaps not to the satisfaction of a jury," Wolfe said calmly. "Harassment and sabotage can be hard to nail, but extortion and attempted manslaughter are a different matter. The notes alone, coupled with your access and your admitted actions here, will interest the authorities." Brand's eyes flashed. "I admitted nothing that—" "Phooey," Wolfe said. "You have admitted enough. And even if you are foolish enough to try to wriggle free technically, the theater community will know what you are. Your second career will end as your first did, in disgrace." He reached for the phone. "Archie, Inspector Kramer is on night duty. Call him. Tell him there is a man here he will want." Brand surged to his feet. Saul was already moving. You don't see Saul Panzer move until you need to, and then you wonder how he covered the distance that fast. He was between Brand and the door with no fuss, just a hand at his side that promised he'd be somewhere else if he tried anything energetic. Brand didn't. He looked at Anton instead. "You stole my life," he said quietly. "All I did was try to balance the ledger." Anton's answer was a whisper. "You tried to erase me." Brand smiled without humor. "How does it feel?" Kramer arrived 20 minutes later, smelling faintly of cigar smoke and suspicion. He took in the assembled actors and civilians, grunted, listened to Wolfe's summary with bad grace, heard a shorter, sharper version from me, and looked at Brand like he was a smudge that needed to be erased from his blotter. It wasn't clean, but it was enough. He took Brand, Gideon Lark, into custody without handcuffs, but with emphasis. The others left in a daze. Hallowell fuming, Lorna shaken, Scylla exhausted. Anton paused at the office door, looking at Wolfe. "What happens to the show?" he asked. "That," Wolfe said, "is up to you and your conscience. You might, for example, consider acknowledging your partner, posthumously, if necessary." Anton swallowed. "I don't know if I can." "Then you have learned nothing," Wolfe said. "Good evening." Anton left. The brownstone grew quiet again by degrees. Fritz cleared the extra chairs. Saul slipped out with a nod. Kramer took his cigar and his new headache back to Center Street. I shut the door, turned, and found Wolfe studying the shard of mirror on his desk. You're not keeping that as a paperweight, are you? I asked. He snorted. Hardly. He picked it up in his thick fingers, turned it once so his own face broke into small crooked planes, then wrapped it back in my handkerchief and handed it to me. Dispose of it. In the trash. In the river, if you like, he said. It has served its purpose. I pocketed it and went back to my chair. You know, there's a simpler way to solve problems. Some people use therapy. Therapy, Wolfe said, is merely the slow, expensive acknowledgement of truths a man already knows and refuses to face. Mr. Vale required something more abrupt. He shifted, settling deeper into the chair, and Mr. Locke required a mirror that would not lie. I eyed him. You feel sorry for them? I feel nothing of the sort, he said sharply. They are fools. One fed on applause until he starved his conscience. The other cluttered his mind with vengeance until there was no room for anything else. It was inevitable that they would collide again. I merely placed a chair in the right spot and watched. Yeah, I said, but you placed it where the glass didn't show. He gave me a look that suggested I was trespassing on metaphorical property. What interests me, he said more quietly, is the human impulse to flee one's own reflection. A man who builds an entire life on the promise of not seeing himself, he is already in flight. Anyone who promises him an invisible mirror is either a charlatan or a partner in his cowardice. And where does that leave you? I asked. You don't own a mirror in this office. Just shelves. Books, he said, are mirrors enough. They reflect not the face, but the mind. That is more tolerable. Occasionally. Fritz's voice floated in from the hall. Dinner is ready, Mr. Wolfe. Good, Wolfe said. Archie, wash your hands. An association with actors requires at least that much purification. I stood. It's not actors you tangled with this time. It's a magician who didn't want to exist and a businessman who did. Pfui, both wanted the same thing, Wolfe said, levering himself up with the usual effort. They wanted to decide for themselves what the world saw when it looked at them. And you? I, he said with dignity, am content to let the world see whatever it likes. Its judgment is of no consequence. Easy to say from your chair, I told him. He paused at the door, looked back at the empty office, and said, On the contrary, Archie, it is only easy from a chair. Men who must stand before an audience find it harder. He went out toward the dining room. I flicked off the light, glanced once at the spot on the desk where the shard had been, and followed him. If there's one thing I've learned working for Nero Wolfe, it's this. In the end, everyone gets reflected. Some in glass, some in print, some in the eyes of the people they wronged, and some in the quiet, heavy gaze of a man who never leaves his chair and still manages to see more than any mirror. Dinner was trout. I made sure my fork didn't slip. You never know who's watching. 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 Never know who's